taking up the banner early last session. They let out and became true allies and friends to the LGBTQ community. We also want to thank our allies in the medical and mental health who came to our defense with both facts and science. Every major medical and mental health organization in Utah came out for support. And we had so many advocacy organizations working alongside of us with the ACLU of Utah. We also had the Utah Pride Center, T of Utah, and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention all standing with us together. We also want to send a special shout out to all of the university students who let us sit in at Governor Herbert's office. I have a special place in my heart for activists who like to cause trouble, and it was truly, I think, a turning point in this effort. And perhaps most importantly, we want to thank the survivors of conversion therapy who came out and they told their stories time and again, and it was often very difficult and public spaces and public committee hearings, and to actually testify sitting next to actual conversion therapists. And so for their courage and their strength, we are so grateful. They opened hearts and ultimately changed minds. So I want to turn, we have 4 speakers today, and the first person we want to hear from is an actual survivor himself of conversion therapy, Nathan Daly.
Hey y'all, how you doing? So as you said, my name is Utah, studying biology and the philosophy of science. First of all, I would like to thank the governor for taking his stance of following science. As I just said, I love science. I know that was probably a difficult thing for him to do, especially politically. And also, we harassed him a lot. So that it was meaningful that he continued to work with us. Last week, a friend sent me a podcast where a young man was talking. He's 19, and he lives here in Salt Lake, and he's currently undergoing conversion therapy. Unfortunately, this bill doesn't cover him. But as he was talking, I was reminded of the feelings of inadequacy, not being good enough, and not belonging. To him and other people that are currently in conversion therapy, I hope that at some point they will realize that they are worth being with us and belonging just as they are. I believe that this bill communicates that to youth that are vulnerable to this practice, and that it protects them from the harms that I have undergone in some of the worst days of my life. I think it also protects parents from making a mistake that could cost them their youth's life. I don't think that parents put their children in this practice because they don't care about them. It's done out of fear and care for their children. I think that ending this practice makes it so that they will find the resources that will ultimately protect their children and help them grow into individuals that they're meant to be without harming them or communicating that they're worth any less than the rest of us. So ultimately, this bill means to me that youth will be accepted and protected within our communities, and I'm thankful to live in a state like Utah where we say that you matter to everyone. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Nathan. I was saying today, like, Nathan, you literally are the poster boy for ending conversion therapy. So thank you for putting yourself out there like that. We also want to welcome next Dr. Nan Klein, who is Utah Psychological Association's Director of Professional Affairs.
Good morning. On behalf of the Utah Psychological Association, we commend the governor, the Utah Psychologist Licensing Board, and the Utah Division of Occupational and Professional Licensing in achieving a significant milestone in protecting Utah youth by banning dangerous conversion practices. Sexual orientation change efforts and gender identity change efforts have been repudiated by all major world medical and mental health organizations, In concert with the American Psychological Association, we reject the label of therapy attached to conversion practices. Consumers of psychotherapy, particularly youth, deserve safe and effective treatment. Sexual orientation change efforts and gender identity change efforts are neither. Current data indicate that 20,000 youth between the ages of 13 and 17 will undergo conversion practices from a licensed healthcare professional before they reach the age of 18 in the states that currently do not ban the practice. We applaud Utah as reducing that number from 41 states to 40. Thank you.
Yeah, and what's significant here is Utah is the 19th state in the country to end the practice of conversion therapy, and I think, and hands down, the most conservative state to do so. It's rapidly moving now through the Virginia legislature, so I think they'll be the 20th. So the next person I want to hear from is the man who has really been helping guide Equality Utah and helping to craft the legislation that we've passed successfully over the past few years, Professor Clifford Roski.
Today is truly a historic day. Conversion therapy is a life-threatening practice that victimizes children and tears families apart. We know now, thanks to the publication of some recent peer-reviewed studies, that children who are subjected to conversion therapy, more than 60% of them attempt to take their own lives. Today, I think the most important thing to share here, as Troy said, this is the most conservative state to ever protect children from conversion therapy, and already this law, even before it became effective, was affecting the conversation in other states. I've received calls from Arizona, Iowa, and Nebraska that are using Utah's law as a model. There will be many more bills introduced in conservative states across the country, and they're looking to our example to show that this is no longer a partisan cause, that we all agree on how important it is to protect children from the risk of suicide.
When we first had our press conference last year, and the press started reporting, nationwide headlines were kind of baffled that Republican lawmakers had introduced legislation to end conversion therapy in the state. And so we want to introduce for our final speaker, the guy that started it off all for us, Representative Craig Hall.
My name is Representative Craig Hall. I represent District 33 in the Utah House of Representatives, which is part of West Valley. About a year and a half ago, someone from Equality Utah approached me and said, hey, we're thinking about introducing a bill to prohibit conversion therapy in the 2019 session, and we'd like you to be the sponsor. And what do you think about that? And my response was, I need to learn more about this. And I put myself into the study. I read the studies, I read some books. One of the more influential books that I read was Saving Alex. If you haven't had a chance to read that book, I would encourage all of you to do so. Through that study, through those books, I came back 100% committed to making sure that we ban conversion therapy in the state of Utah. We started with some original language in the bill. It went through about 12, 15 different revisions, and we ended up with an administrative rule that tracks the same language in the original bill. Just would love to thank so many people that were involved in the crafting of the bill, those whose stories were told. We all knew that, and we expected an uphill battle to get this bill passed and prohibit conversion therapy throughout the state. But one thing I did not anticipate is how much of a privilege it would be to sponsor this legislation. I truly met amazing people I likely never would have met. Dozens have reached out and shared their most personal stories, many of which are simply heart-wrenching. I have been moved to tears when, several times when parents told me their accounts that begin with, my daughter experienced this, or my son experienced that. Those stories kept me going in a direction that I believed was best. Thank you so much to all individuals who helped with this bill in any small way. You are simply incredible. We'd like to thank those individuals who shared their stories, very personal stories. We'd like to thank Cliff Roski, who was so instrumental in making sure that we had the right language in the bill. This bill, and the administrative rule, both prohibits conversion therapy throughout the state for minors and also protects the legitimate interests of therapists and patients and their families. So we are so thrilled that we're able to get to this point. Again, thank you so much for everyone who has helped in any small part to make sure that conversion therapy is banned for minors throughout the state. It simply will save lives. Thank you very much.
And now, if you have any questions, we're all here to answer them.
Hey, for Reverend Holman, can you explain exactly what the rule does? And
Sure. The rule says that the practice of conversion therapy is unprofessional conduct for anyone who is licensed as a mental health therapist in the state of Utah. So anyone who's using a state license cannot subject a minor to conversion therapy. That's the rule. And that's exactly what the laws do in the 18 other states where they exist.
is this effective as a law then? It's an administrative rule, right?
Yeah, so they have the same effect here. The only thing a bill would have done was the exact same thing, define as unprofessional, conversion therapy as unprofessional conduct. So that's what all of the statutes do in the other states, and ours is a rule. But it applies to every licensed mental health therapist in the state, just like a statute does.
Troy, any concerns that the legislature might come back around and modify this?
Well, I would hate to see legislation now to legalize conversion therapy in the state. I think it would be harmful to young people and send a really damaging message. And we've worked really hard to address a lot of the concerns that conservatives have, and we recognize that that saving lives is not a partisan issue here. So, yeah, they may try, but I think it would be a very dangerous effort.
We've been working on passing this for the last couple sessions. Talk about the challenges that, how tough has the road been for you?
Well, it's actually, people keep saying that to me, but it's actually been 1 year. It took us 7 years to actually pass our non-discrimination law, and it took 20 years to get a really viable LGBTQ inclusive hate crimes law. And so the fact that we were able to end conversion therapy, or the practice of conversion in less than a year is pretty incredible. So I think that people are getting to know the LGBTQ community on an unprecedented scale now, and when we know better, we do better. And people now, everyone has an LGBT family member or a close friend or a work associate, and so it's getting harder for folks. The old arguments that people have used to exile and exclude us from public life just aren't effective anymore. Yeah, that's it. We good? Are we good?
We're really good.